The call came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon as I pored over the latest budget forecasts. My name is Olivia, and that call would change everything I had carefully built over the last 6 years. "We'd like you to head up the new division," my boss said, her voice firm and direct through the line. "It's in your hometown, Eastwood. The pay increase is substantial, and you'd have full operational control." I froze, the pen in my hand hovering over the page. Running my own branch had been my goal for years. But Eastwood? I had worked tirelessly to create a life in Portland, specifically to avoid ever returning to that place. "I'll need your answer by Friday," she continued. "The Mason Holdings account depends on someone with local knowledge heading the project." Mason Holdings. Of course. The same company my older brother Caleb worked for, or more accurately, the company owned by his fiancée's influential family. Life really did have a way of throwing curveballs. "I'll think about it," I managed, my stomach twisting. That evening, I called my younger sister, Clara. She answered on the first ring, as she always did. "Olivia, save me from this bridal shower madness," she groaned. "Becca's already on her third set of floral centerpieces because the first two weren't Pinterest perfect. How's life on your end? How's Ava handling it?" I asked, thinking of our 16-year-old sister. "Oh, you know Ava," Clara replied with a laugh. "She's smiling sweetly while plotting everyone's demise." "But seriously, what's up? You sound weird." I told her about the job offer. The line went quiet, so quiet I thought the call had dropped. Then Clara's voice returned, hesitant but tinged with excitement. "Mom and Dad are going to lose it in a good way, I mean. They've been walking on eggshells since Caleb got engaged to Becca, like they're desperate to impress her family." "That's exactly what I'm worried about," I admitted, pacing my apartment. Last Christmas, Dad couldn't stop bragging about Caleb's engagement while ignoring my promotion. "I don't need more of that." "Forget them," Clara said firmly.
"Take the job.
Show them you're not just the middle child who ran away. Plus, Ava and I need someone sane around here." Later that night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of Caleb, Becca, and my parents at a high-end restaurant. The caption read, "Family dinner planning the wedding. Wish you were here."
B.
I hadn't been invited, of course. The next morning, I called my boss and accepted the position. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about proving them wrong. When I called my parents to tell them the news, my mother's response was telling. "Oh, that's wonderful, honey. Perfect timing, too. You can help with the wedding planning. Becca's family is sparing no expense, you know." I bit back a sharp response. "Actually, I'll be busy running the new division. We're managing Mason Holdings' biggest project." The silence on the other end was satisfying. But my father's next words caught me off guard. "The Mason expansion project?" But Caleb said he was overseeing that through Becca's family business. That was news to me. And judging by my father's tone, it was about to become a very big problem. "Well," I said, keeping my voice calm, "I guess we'll all be working together." As I hung up, a familiar unease settled in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking straight into a trap. But for once, I wasn't going to back down. It was time to show my family, especially Becca, exactly what the forgotten middle child could do. Moving back into my childhood home felt like stepping into a time capsule, except everything had been redecorated to suit Becca's taste. Family photos were replaced with glossy engagement shots, and my old bedroom had been converted into a wedding planning war room. I was unpacking in Ava's room, my temporary refuge, when a commotion from downstairs caught my attention. Clara's voice carried up, sharp and defensive. "But I already bought the dress you approved last week." "That was before I saw what my cousins are wearing," came Becca's reply, dripping with condescension. "We can't have the bridesmaids looking budget, can we?" I gripped the doorframe, counting to 10 before heading down. The scene in the living room stopped me cold. Clara stood in the center, wearing a pale lavender dress that looked perfect on her. Ava sat in the corner, pretending to do homework, but clearly eavesdropping. Becca circled Clara like a hawk, phone in hand. "Olivia," my mother explained, jumping up from the couch. "Perfect timing. Maybe you can convince Clara that Becca's right about the dresses. The new ones are only $3,200 each." 3,000. I repeated, staring at my sister's stricken face. Clara's composure faltered for just a moment before she forced a smile. Actually, I said, keeping my tone neutral, I have a meeting with Richard Mason tomorrow about the new division. Maybe I'll ask him about the wedding budget while I'm there. The room went silent. Becca's head snapped up, her polished smile faltering for just a moment before she recovered. Oh, didn't Caleb mention, she said sweetly. My father's letting him handle all the business aspects of the expansion. We wouldn't want to complicate things. Funny, I replied. That's not what my contract says. The front door opened and Caleb walked in, his timing impeccable as ever. What's not what your contract says? He asked, his tone light but his gaze wary. Before I could respond, Becca was at his side, her hand on his arm. Darling, I thought we agreed you'd handle the Mason project. Olivia seems to think she's running it. Caleb's expression shifted from confusion to that familiar, patronizing smile. Come on, Liv, he said. You know how these things work. The Masons prefer to keep things simple. I take point on this, everyone meaning you. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Olivia, my father warned from his armchair, his tone heavy with disapproval. Your brother has connections here, real relationships with the business community. Maybe it's time to be practical. I looked around the room, at Clara in her stunning lavender dress that apparently wasn't good enough, at Ava pretending not to care, and at my parents deferring to Becca's every whim. 6 years away, and nothing had changed. Practicals? I repeated. Like spending $3,200 on new dresses when the ones we have are perfectly fine? Or letting Caleb take credit for my work because he's marrying into the right family? You always do this, Caleb sighed, his tone exasperated. Turn everything into a competition. This is my wedding we're talking about. No, Becca cut in, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes sharp. This is about family. And family supports each other, doesn't it? Unless, of course, you're planning to make things difficult, Olivia. The threat was clear in her tone. I glanced at Clara, who shook her head slightly, a silent warning not to escalate. But I was done playing nice. You're right, Becca, I said, my voice steady. Family does support each other. Which is why I'm taking Clara shopping tomorrow for whatever dress she actually wants to wear. And as for the Mason Holdings project, I pulled out my phone and opened an email from my boss. Maybe you two should read the contract terms more carefully. I turned and walked out, but not before catching Ava's small smile from behind her textbook. As I climbed the stairs, I heard Becca's voice, sharp and clear. Well, I suppose some people just don't understand how things work around here anymore. Such a shame. Game on, I thought. Let's see how things really work. The truth hit me like a slap to the face when I stumbled upon the papers in my father's office. I hadn't been looking for them. I was searching for last year's tax records for the new division. Instead, I found loan agreements between my father and Richard Mason, dated back to when Caleb first started dating Becca. My hands trembled as I read the details: personal loans, business investments, property deals, all benefiting my brother. The amounts made my stomach churn. No wonder my parents had been so eager to push this wedding forward. My phone buzzed. A text from Ava. SOS. They're making me skip my recital for wedding stuff again. I was still staring at the message when my father walked in. He froze, his eyes darting from my face to the papers in my hands. Those are private business matters, he said quietly. Private. I held up one of the documents. Like how Caleb's new position at Mason Holdings came with a $110,000 signing bonus that went straight to paying off your debts. He closed the door behind him. You don't understand the pressure we've been under. The recession hit the business hard. When Caleb met Becca, you sold him to them. I cut in, my voice sharp. And now you're letting them walk all over this family because you're afraid they'll call in their debts. I'm protecting this family, he snapped, his voice rising. Richard Mason could destroy everything we've built. Your mother's security, your sister's futures, by letting Becca control their lives? I shot back. Forcing Ava to miss her recital? Making Clara spend money she doesn't have. A knock at the door made us both jump. Becca stood there, her practiced smile firmly in place. I thought I heard voices, she said sweetly. Olivia, Daddy was asking about you. Something about the project management role being better suited for someone with local experience. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. The implication was clear. Play nice, or watch my career disappear too. Actually, I said, my tone icy. I just found some very interesting documents about local experience. Wanna take a look? Becca's smile faltered for just a moment. I'm sure whatever business arrangements exist are perfectly normal for families in our position. Our position? I laughed bitterly. You mean where you hold financial threats over everyone's heads to get what you want? Olivia, my father warned, but I cut him off. Did you know she's making Ava skip her recital? I demanded. The one she's been practicing for all years? The wedding planning schedule is very tight, Becca said coolly. Sacrifices have to be made. Family understands that. Family understands limits, I corrected her. Family doesn't use money as a weapon. Becca stepped closer, lowering her voice. Speaking of limits, it would be a shame if Daddy had to reconsider the expansion project's management structure. Caleb's been so looking forward to proving himself. Is that what this is about? I asked, pulling up an email on my phone. Because I have some very interesting correspondence about who actually secured the Mason Holdings contract. Wanna guess whose name isn't on any of it? The color drained from her face. Before she could respond, Caleb appeared in the doorway. What's going on? He asked, his tone wary. Your sister was just leaving, Becca said firmly. I gathered the documents, watching my father's face crumble as I tucked them into my bag. No, I said calmly. I think I'll stay. We should all talk about these loan agreements as a family. Olivia, please, my father began.
Dad.
Caleb's confusion was genuine. What loan agreements? I met Becca's gaze. Should I tell him, or would you like to explain how his perfect job offer came about? The silence that followed was deafening. Becca's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the cracks underneath. Well, she said, her voice tight, I suppose we'll have to discuss this at dinner. All of us, including Daddy. The threat in her tone was clear. But for once, I wasn't backing down. Let her bring Richard Mason into this. Maybe it was time everyone saw exactly what kind of family we'd become. I barely had time to respond before Evelyn interjected, her voice sugary but sharp. Daddy, remember what we talked about? Keeping business matters separate from family time. Actually, I said, meeting Arthur's cool gaze, I'd love to discuss the project. Especially since there seems to be some confusion about who's handling what. Sophia nudged me under the table, a subtle warning. I ignored it. I was done playing the quiet, accommodating middle child. Speaking of handling things, Evelyn chimed, turning to Luna with faux sweetness. Have you mentioned to everyone about moving your dance recital? Luna stiffened next to me, her voice small. I haven't decided yet. Oh, but you have to, Evelyn pressed, smiling wide but with ice in her tone. The wedding rehearsal schedule is already set. Richard, you know how important commitment is, don't you? I watched my little sister shrink into her chair, and something inside me snapped. Luna's not changing her recital, I said firmly, setting my fork down with enough force to silence the table. Liam, my father warned, his tone low, but I wasn't stopping now. No, I said clearly. Luna's worked for months on that performance. The wedding can work around it. Richard raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. I wasn't aware there was a scheduling conflict. There isn't, Evelyn cut in quickly, her smile slipping ever so slightly. It's just a small misunderstanding about priorities. Priorities? I let out a bitter laugh. Like the priority of using your father's money to control everyone in this family? The room froze. My mother gasped, dropping her napkin. My father half rose from his chair, his face pale. That's enough, Jacob said, though his voice lacked conviction. Richard set his utensils down, his gaze hardening. What exactly do you mean by that, Liam? I reached for my bag, but Evelyn was faster. Daddy, she said smoothly, Liam's just having trouble adjusting to being home. Maybe we should let her cool off. Actually, Richard interrupted, his tone sharp. I'm very interested in hearing this. I pulled out the loan agreements, spreading them across the table like a winning hand. Your daughter and my brother's perfect relationship was bought and paid for by Thompson Industries. Every job offer, Every investment. It's all been about control. These are private family matters, my father muttered weakly. Richard ignored him. David, is this true? The silence that followed was thick. Evelyn's mask finally cracked as she watched her father scan the documents, his face darkening. Mr. Thompson, my mother began, her voice shaking. We never meant. Stop, Luna said suddenly, her voice loud and clear. We all turned to look at her. For the first time in years, she sounded strong. Just stop lying, she continued, her chin trembling but her resolve unshaken. She turned to Richard. Do you want to know what else your daughter's been doing? Check my phone. I recorded everything. Evelyn's face drained of color. You what? Luna pulled her phone from her pocket, her hands shaking but her determination unwavering. Every threat, every manipulation. I saved it all. Luna, honey, my mother pleaded, her voice desperate. Think about what you're doing to this family. The family? I stood, glaring at my parents. Look at what we've already done to this family. We're so terrified of losing Arthur's money that we let Evelyn walk all over us. Richard's face was unreadable as he reached for Luna's phone. He scrolled through her recordings, his expression tightening with every word. Finally, he looked up at Evelyn. I think, he said quietly, we need to have a very different kind of family discussion. Evelyn shot to her feet. Daddy, please. Not now, Evelyn, he said coldly. He turned to me and Luna.
Liam. Luna. Come with me.
Bring those documents. I grabbed my bag and stood, pausing only to glance at Jacob. For the first time since this began, he looked lost, like a man realizing his perfect world was a lie. The truth hurts, doesn't it? I murmured as I passed him. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about forcing them to see the truth. The email from Evelyn arrived a week later, at 2 a.m. I stared at the attached photos, old family pictures of my father with Arthur, long before Jacob and Evelyn had even met. The message was simple, $11,000 cash or these go public. Think about what that would do to your precious family name. The coffee shop where I met Jacob that morning was quiet, the hum of conversation broken only by the hiss of the espresso machine. He sat hunched in the corner, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Did you know? I asked, sliding into the seat across from him. About Dad and Richards? No, he shoved a coffee toward me. But I found more documents last night. The Thompson connection goes back further than we thought. Dad's been laundering money through the business. The world tilted sideways. Evelyn knows everything, he added quietly. She's been collecting evidence for years, waiting for the right moment. The wedding, it's not about status, Liam. It's protection. For all of us. My phone buzzed again. Another email from Evelyn, more photos. She wants money from me, I said softly. To keep quiet. Just pay it, Jacob pleaded.
Please.
Mom can't handle a scandal, and Dad, they'll arrest him, Liam. I looked at my brother, a man unraveling under the weight of his secrets. So we just let her win? I asked bitterly. Let her keep controlling everyone? It's not about winning anymore, Jacob whispered, his voice hollow. But as I watched him crumble, I realized something. Maybe it was still about winning for me.
My phone rang.
It was Sophia. Liam, she said breathlessly. You need to come home.
Now.
Evelyn's here, with her lawyer. I stared at Evelyn, her tears a mix of anger and satisfaction. You knew this would happen, I said quietly, my voice trembling but steady enough to cut through the silence. Of course I knew, she replied, a broken smile tugging at her lips. Did you think you could outmaneuver me, Liam? You wanted to burn it all down, and here we are. Arthur remained calm at the head of the room, his expression cold as stone. The rest of the boardroom sat frozen in stunned disbelief. My father slumped in his chair, his face pale, hands covering his eyes. Jacob sat beside him, unable to look at me. Liam, my father's voice cracked as he finally spoke. Please, this wasn't supposed to happen. I was trying to protect us. Protect us? I shot back, my anger rising again. By burying yourself in debt, selling Jacob off to Evelyn's family, and forcing Luna and Sophia to live in your shadow? That's not protection. That's surrender. Evelyn crossed her arms, smugness returning to her face. Don't be so righteous, Liam. You're just as complicit as the rest of us. If you hadn't dug into this, none of this would be happening. But you couldn't resist playing the hero, could you? Richard cleared his throat, silencing everyone again. Evelyn, you've done enough damage here. His tone was firm. The board will proceed with our decision. All contracts with William Enterprises are hereby terminated, effective immediately. Additionally, the evidence presented will be handed over to the authorities for formal investigation.
What?
My father sat up abruptly. You can't do that. I can and I will, Richard said coolly. He glanced at me, his eyes sharp but measured. Liam, you've revealed a mess that spans years of manipulation and deceit. You exposed the truth, but truth comes at a cost. And what cost is that? I demanded. The end of this partnership, Richard replied. Evelyn's games have jeopardized not just her family, but mine as well. Jacob, he turned to my brother, you were given opportunities out of trust. Trust that's now shattered. Jacob's face fell, his voice small. I didn't know the full extent of it. Maybe not, Richard said. But ignorance doesn't erase responsibility. Evelyn suddenly stood, her hands slamming onto the table. You can't do this, Daddy. This isn't fair. Fair? Richard turned to her, his voice sharp. You've humiliated this family. Used my name, my company to manipulate and extort. This is your doing, Evelyn. The room fell silent as Evelyn sank back into her seat, defeated. I watched her for a moment, feeling no triumph, just a strange emptiness. All the power she had wielded, all her threats, had finally caught up to her. What happens now? Sophia's voice broke the silence. She sat next to Luna, her hand protectively holding our youngest sisters. Richard stood tall, gathering the documents and tucking them into a folder. The authorities will decide what happens next. As for you all, he looked at my father, this partnership is over. I suggest you prepare for the fallout. He turned to leave, and Evelyn bolted from her seat to follow him, her face desperate. I heard her voice pleading faintly as they disappeared down the hallway. My father stared blankly ahead, the weight of everything finally pressing down on him. Liam, he whispered, but I couldn't bear to hear it. I picked up my bag, feeling Luna and Sophia follow me as I moved to leave. Come on, I said softly, my voice steady despite everything unraveling around us. We're done here. As we stepped out of the boardroom, Jacob caught up to me, his expression worn and lost. Liam, wait. I didn't know. I didn't mean for any of this. I stopped and looked at him, my voice quiet but firm. Maybe you didn't know, but you let it happen. That's on you, Jacob. For the first time, he didn't argue. The drive home was quiet. Luna sat in the back seat, her arms crossed, while Sophia stared out the window. None of us spoke until we pulled into the driveway. What happens now? Luna asked softly. I turned to her, finally letting my exhaustion show. We pick up the pieces. One step at a time. Evelyn won't stop, Sophia murmured, her voice dark. She'll come back for more. Let her try, I said quietly, meeting her gaze. She doesn't own us anymore. I stepped inside, feeling the weight of everything we'd lost and gained. The war with Evelyn wasn't over, but at least the truth had been dragged into the light, and sometimes that's the hardest battle to win. The phone call came late in the afternoon, as sunlight spilled through the blinds of the police station's tiny interrogation room. I had just seen my lawyer out when the door opened again. Samuel Caldwell entered, the powerful CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, his face lined with years of ambition and authority. He placed a USB drive on the table and slid it toward me without a word. What's this? I asked, my voice less Liam than I intended. Something you need to see, he replied, quietly, almost regretful. I inserted the USB into the laptop. Video files began to play, security footage from Caldwell Enterprises, time-stamped and authentic. In clip after clip, his daughter, Victoria, appeared. She stood in his office, shouting about controlling my family, leveraging my father's debts to force an alliance, manipulating contracts to benefit their side of the merger. Every sordid detail was right there. I looked up, realization hitting like a punch to the gut. Elias sent this, I said. My brother, he was the only one who could access these recordings. Samuel sighed, sinking into the chair opposite me. My daughter learned manipulation from me. I taught her how to break people, how to dominate. I thought that was leadership, but... He looked away, his voice trembling. I was wrong. The door opened again. Victoria entered, mascara streaked, and defiance still clinging to her like armor. Her voice shook with anger as she spat. You betrayed me? No, Samuel said quietly, standing to face her. I betrayed you first. I taught you that control was everything. That power was the only thing that mattered. And I was wrong. Her broken laugh echoed in the room, hollow and shut. Fix it? Is that what this is? You think you can fix this by throwing everything away? By turning against me? Samuel's gaze softened with regret. I failed you, but I won't let you ruin yourself anymore. My lawyer returned then, flanked by Elias and my father's attorney. I stood up as they approached, their faces tight with urgency. The board has reviewed the new evidence, my lawyer said. They're dropping all major charges against your family, Liam. What's left can be settled as minor financial infractions. Victoria's eyes darted toward the laptop, panic overtaking her fury. She lunged forward, desperate to stop the inevitable, but Samuel caught her arm. Enough, he said firmly. For once, Victoria, face the consequences of your actions. Her voice cracked. And you? Did you ever face yours? All those years teaching me how to break people, how to push them until they fell. You wanted me to be just like you. Yes, he admitted softly. And I regret it every day. The silence in the room was suffocating. I looked at her, the woman who had spent years trying to tear my family apart, standing in the ruins of her own ambition. You want to know the difference between us? I said, my voice calm but unyielding. I fought for my family. You fought for control. And that's why you lost. Elias finally spoke, his voice quiet but clear. Victoria, we built lies. You and I both. And I let you manipulate me because I was too afraid to stand up to you. But I'm done being afraid. The lawyer cleared her throat. Miss Caldwell, your father has offered to cover the cost of a treatment program. It's your decision. Victoria's mask finally shattered. Tears spilled down her face, and she turned to Samuel, pleading with her eyes. You think I need help? This isn't about me being broken. This is about power. It's always been about power. Samuel stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. No, Victoria. It's about letting go. Let me help you. Please. For a moment, she stood frozen, her shoulders trembling. Then something in her cracked. She collapsed against him, sobbing like a child, like the girl she must have been before power became her only truth. I turned to Elias, who met my gaze for the first time, guilt and understanding reflected in his eyes. The family we thought we were was gone. But maybe, just maybe, something better could take its place. Samuel led his daughter from the room, leaving the rest of us in heavy silence. My lawyer leaned toward me. You're free to go, Liam. This is over. I shook my head. No, I whispered. It's just beginning. Because rebuilding doesn't happen overnight. Healing takes time, and sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought against enemies, but for the people you love. Outside, the sun had begun to set, painting the city gold. Elias fell into step beside me, his voice low. You really think we can fix all of this? I looked at the horizon, at the flicker of hope on the edge of everything we'd lost. I think we can try, I said. And this time, trying was enough. I slipped quietly out of the room, leaving the chaos and reckoning behind. Some battles don't need warriors. They just need time for the truth to dismantle the lies on its own. Behind me, Asher followed. Liam, I'm sorry for everything, he said softly. I turned to face him. I know, I replied. But it's time to go home. Our sisters are waiting. 6 months later, the morning sunlight filtered through the wide windows of my new apartment. Naomi practiced her dance routine in the living room, graceful and determined, while Sophie sat cross-legged on the couch, poring over textbooks for her college entrance exams. The sound of their laughter still felt like a miracle, something real, something earned after everything we'd been through. My phone buzzed with a message from Asher. "Dad's asking if you're coming to dinner tonight." These monthly dinners had become part of our rebuilding, a fragile but deliberate effort to heal, one conversation at a time. Our parents had changed, quieter now, softened by mistakes they couldn't erase, but were finally owning. "We should go," Sophie said, glancing up from her notes. "Mom said she's making your favorite, spinach lasagna." "And Evelyn?" Naomi asked quietly, her eyes meeting mine. I checked my email. Another update from Evelyn. She was still at the treatment center, sharing small pieces of progress. Her last message had ended with a question that lingered with me. "How do you fix a family once it's broken?" "She's working on herself," I answered. "Just like we all are."
The doorbell rang.
I opened it to see our father, standing tall but somehow lighter than I'd seen him in years. The weight of old choices no longer crushing him. "Thought I'd drive you all to dinner," he said, his voice cautious. As we walked to his car, I watched him interact with Naomi and Sophie, really seeing them, this time. He'd started showing up for Naomi's rehearsals and helping Sophie research scholarships. Small gestures, but genuine ones. "Liam," he said as we reached the car, his voice hesitant. "The new branch numbers came in. You've done incredible work." "Thanks, Dad." I smiled, feeling how much those words had shifted in meaning over the months. "It's not just me. Asher's been a huge help rebuilding the partnerships." Asher had surprised us all, stepping out of Richard Caldwell's shadow to start his own consulting firm. When Richard offered to keep him at the company, Asher refused. "Some legacies aren't worth preserving," he'd told me. Dinner was quiet, with a space left at the table, a place that had once been Evelyn's. It wasn't just a seat. It was a silent reminder of what could happen when ambition and manipulation took precedence over family. Richard mentioned Evelyn might come home for Christmas, Mom said quietly as she passed the dish. The table fell silent. Naomi slid her hand into mine. "That's good," I said finally. "Everyone deserves a chance to heal. Do they?" Sophie asked, her tone sharp. "After everything she did?" I thought of Evelyn's emails, her father's hardened regret, and the damage we'd all had to undo. "Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who are hurting the worst," I said gently. "It doesn't excuse their actions, but it helps us understand them." "Like Dad's decisions?" Naomi asked softly. Our father set down his fork, meeting her gaze. "A lot of what I did I thought was protecting this family. But I was wrong, and I'm trying to make it right." That night, back at the apartment, I found an envelope tucked into my bag. Evelyn's handwriting marked the outside. Inside was a check, the exact amount she had once tried to extort from me, and a note. "This isn't redemption. I know that. But some debts can't be repaid in money. Use this for your sister's futures." I stared at the check for a long time before tearing it in half. I grabbed a pen and wrote back a single line. "Some debts can't be paid at all." Sophie appeared in my doorway, arms crossed, watching me. "You okay?" I smiled faintly, setting down the torn check. "Just thinking about what it means to protect your family, whether it's about fighting or forgiving." "And which is this?" she asked. I looked into the living room, where Naomi had turned up her music, spinning across the floor with lightness I hadn't seen in years. Sophie grabbed my hand and pulled me toward her. "This," I said, joining in as Naomi laughed and twirled, "is about choosing who we want to be, not who we're afraid of becoming." The three of us danced in the soft glow of the living room lights, no longer weighed down by the shadows of the past. I thought about family, not the one we'd lost, but the one we'd chosen to rebuild. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free.